Proper tension of your thread is an essential issue for smooth embroidery. On your machine, you have 2 tension knobs per thread path. The pre-tensioner located on the upper thread rack, and the secondary tensioner located on the thread base. The pre-tensioner's primary function is to detangle the thread coming up off of the cone, as well as to initially put approximately 1/3 of the overall tension on the thread. Another part of the tension applied to the thread is in the thread tube and in other parts of the thread path as it goes through various thread guides. The primary tension knob that you'll be concerned with is the lower tension knob. This tension knob will apply approximately another 1/3 of the thread tension. To adjust the tension on either the upper or the lower tensioner, turning it counterclockwise loosens the tension, turning it clockwise increases the tension. It is important to understand that your tension is essentially a tug of war that's happening between the thread coming off the bobbin case and the thread coming down through the thread path. The other thing to understand is that the bobbin tension will remain consistent throughout all 15 colors of thread. When you change the bobbin tension, it affects the tension on all 15 colors of thread. If you change the tension of just one color, it does not affect the tension of the bobbin. It only affects the tension of the one thread path that you've changed the knob on, either the upper or the lower. Since this is a tug-of-war kind of situation, we're wanting to make sure that you do not adjust the bobbin tension very often. This should be set and left and only checked if there's a reason to believe that the tension has changed at the bobbin. Otherwise, your primary tension changes are going to occur on the individual thread paths. It's also important to understand that every time you have an issue, you do not necessarily need to change the tension. The issue might be that the thread path has somehow changed, come out from underneath perhaps a thread guide, or that the cone of thread has gotten tangled back here. To resolve an issue that you believe to be tension related, your first task is to ensure that there is no issue with the thread path itself. What I mean by that is that before you adjust any tensions, whether on the bobbin or on the upper thread, you want to ensure that the thread path is correct, that the thread hasn't come out from underneath a tension disc, that it hasn't come from around a thread guide. There's also a tension disc down here that it could come out from underneath, or a thread presser, thread guide here, or any of the other parts of the thread path. The first thing to resolving a tension issue is to ensure that the thread path is correct, that it comes off the cone cleanly without catching on anything, that it's through all the tension discs, through the tube, that it's correctly routed around all of the guides, that it's also correctly gone through the take-up lever assemble area. The same is true for your bobbin case. You want to ensure that the thread has not gotten caught behind the release lever, or that it's not caught around the pigtail, or that it's underneath the tension spring. So the first step to resolving what you believe to be a tension error or issue is to inspect the thread path and make sure that everything is correct from there. The second step to resolving a tension issue is to try to determine whether or not you believe the issue is with your bobbin or with an individual thread path. As discussed on another video, whenever you change the tension on the bobbin case, it affects the tension of all 15 threads. Whenever you change the tension of an individual thread, it only affects the tension on that thread path. So if you have an issue where, say for instance, you have bobbin thread coming up no matter which needle you use and the white bobbin thread is showing on the top of the garment, then that would be an indication that probably your bobbin tension is too loose. If, however, the issue is only with one color of thread, You do not want to change the bobbin tension, as again, that will change the relationship of the tension between all 15 needles, not just the one that you're experiencing an issue with. When changing the tension, generally speaking, this knob needs very little adjustment. This pre-tensioner generally is set at a certain range, and it usually stays at that range. Most tension adjustments for the individual thread color is going to be done on the individual lower tension knob. Turning it counterclockwise loosens the tension. Turning it clockwise increases the tension. To change the tension, the easiest way is to grab a hold of the thread as it's coming out of the needle and begin to pull the thread to determine whether or not the thread pulls smoothly and easily through the thread path. If it feels like it's coming off too loosely, then you might increase the tension on the lower needle, on the lower tensioner, just a little bit. If it feels like it's too tight or it's jerky, first check your thread path and then perhaps loosen the tension knob. Usually about 1 or 2 full turns makes enough of an influence to change the way the machine will sew. So be careful that you're not turning this knob 5 or 6 times either to loosen or to tighten it. For one thing, if you turn it counterclockwise too much, this knob will actually come off. It's just threaded onto this post, and then you'll have to reinstall the knob, which is no big deal, but you don't want to do that. After you've adjusted the tension, then again pull the thread and determine, does it feel like the thread is coming smoothly off the cone and through the thread path.